Hello everybody, I'm Arden. Welcome to another episode of Minecraft Enigmatica 2 Expert. Today, we're going to continue carving our way through the Industrial Craft 2 chapter and finally get to something that I consider extremely important that we probably should have done a while ago. We're going to start down this line to make the replicator. And the important part that we really need to make sooner than later is the matter fabricator to start generating UU matter liquid that we need to power the replicator. This all starts by making the recycler. And they recommend you do this first because, as this says, it dramatically reduces the power needed to produce UU matter by the matter fabricator. The trick is you can make a bunch of these and feed a bunch of scrap into it to lower the power usage. I'm actually going to not do that at this point. I would need to set up in a much bigger spot than I'm going to for now. I'm just going to give it a trickle of power for the time being and call it good. We can always scale it up later. Before we get started, if you look at my wall here of industrial craft machines, you might notice there's an oddity here now. Things don't look quite the way they did last episode, and that's because there's a carpenter now up in that top row there. And that's up there because I decided I wanted to start making overclockers for all my machines to make them go faster. And it's, a relatively simple looking process over here, but it requires IC2 coolant. And I realized that's one of the uses for the fluid solid canning machine that we made last episode. I decided to repurpose this for that right now, and I'll just make another one later to process stuff for nuclear power as a separate unit of its own. But as you can see, it takes water from the water source next to it and a bunch of lapis lazuli dust and processes it straight into the coolant, which then gets ejected out to the side into the carpenter. And I've got the dust down here. I'm not automatically processing this. The recipe I'm using actually eats up a lot of this dust. As you can see here, there's actually a recipe that uses 8 and another one that only uses 1, and they look identical, but they're not. One uses water and the other uses distilled water. And if you click into here, well, you might notice that there's no real recipes to make distilled water, and that's because there are actually two hidden ways to do it. One is the Industrial Craft 2 Solar Distiller, which is really easy to make, but it is extremely slow and you need a very large array of them to really get any decent output from it. It needs access to the sky to be able to work, so I can't do this in a compact machine. I would have to make a really, really large array of it to do this. The other method is through the Industrial Craft Condenser, which requires a steam generator to get steam to be able to condense into distilled water, which I honestly don't plan on making. Both of these are kind of a giant pain, and I've got basically infinite lapis coming out of my sieve farm anyways, so I've just decided to eat the massive cost of lapis for this and just not worry about it. I don't really need that many, and I'm not using it as coolant for something else right now. On to the recycler. So the way the recycler works is it takes any sort of item input and turns it into scrap, which you can then feed into the matter fabricator as fuel to turn into UU matter. The recycler is actually pretty simple to make. It just takes any type of dirt, iron, glowstone, and then a compressor. And the compressors, well, are really simple as well, and we've made a bunch of them already. Okay, so I have it up there on the wall sitting next to a cobblestone generator. The cobblestone generator is just constantly feeding into the recycler, which is being pulled in from the side and creating scrap. Just constantly, which is then ejecting out to the other side, which, well, it currently doesn't have an input for. You notice how it keeps processing this? It's because it takes multiples of these to create a single piece of scrap. And this is where the overclockers come in, and it makes it go faster and faster. There is a breakpoint between a number of recyclers and number of overclockers that you can use to get max output into a matter fabricator to basically stop it from using power or only not surpassing the power necessary to keep the recyclers going, but I have no idea what the breakpoint is offhand personally. And on to the matter fabricator, which I'm holding in my hand. I already made it when I made the recycler just because I figured I'd get it all done at once. And this is a bit more complicated to make. Still not too bad though, which is why I should have done this a while ago. If you look inside the matter fabricator here, it just takes 2 advanced machine casings, these advanced control circuits, and some glowstone, which we've all made before, and this scary looking thing called a Lapitron crystal, which, well, just like the energy crystal before it, looks scary to make, but isn't really. So we've done all this is all made, and we've got it. There's one thing I want to show you before we get started on this though. Okay, so this is a little cramped and it might be a little hard to see, but you notice that this is where I'm going to put the matter fabricator. That's right, let me go knock that out there. You notice how there's a single cable coming out of the plutonium RTG that I'm going to use to power it for now. This is because you do not want your matter fabricator hooked up to your main power grid whatsoever. It will draw any and all power at max draw that it can into it. So as fast as these cables can feed in, it will take it, and it will just drain your power grid dry. You want it on its own power supply, or you want to have it throttled somehow. And you can actually block off these cables so that they only allow access to certain sides, which is what I did here. So I'm feeding the recycler with my main power grid, but I'm not feeding this. And you can do it with the mechanism configurator. You can shift and right click on a connection point to change its input. So this only pushes power in, this only pulls it out. This removes it entirely, which is what we actually wanted to have it do here. But this stops it from these cables from feeding into it, which is why I did that. So now the matter fabricator has all of its scrap. It's slowly going through its process now to generate UU fluid. And we're gonna put in a fluid ejector upgrade to kick it out to the side to put it in the replicator directly once we have it going. But as you can see, it's taking a long time. We're not providing it much power, and it just takes a while. And this is why we wanted to build it early, so it generates UU matter just slowly over time so that we have it when we need it. So the next 3 steps kind of all go together, and that's the pattern storage, the scanner, and the replicator. What you need to do is build a scanner that then stores this stuff in this pattern storage, which is then reads them in for the replicator to be able to make them from. So making each of these is just kind of a beast in its own right. In the case of the pattern storage, it requires mining lasers, which we've made before, but now we need to make a couple more. Most of the rest of this is relatively sane. Crystal memory, which we haven't seen before, but is not that hard to get. It's all stuff we can easily make. This is just clay dust through a pressurizer or the thermal centrifuge, which we have. This one's not too bad. The scanner is also pretty simple, other than the only new thing here is the luminator. And if we click that, this is all easy stuff to make. So this one's not too bad either, other than the advanced machine casing, which is not hard, just tedious, which is why we're making the replicator. The replicator, however, requires a whole bunch of stuff we haven't made and is a kind of a pretty big rabbit hole. So we need HV transformers and an MFE, which is, well, these are down this hole, down this tree, which we haven't done, so I need to build down this chain real fast, which thankfully none of these are all that hard, they're just tedious. But this will knock out most of this tree. Teleporters, which, well, there's the glass fiber cable that was under the MFE, so that's that. Again, not that hard to do. The frequency transmitter, which is pretty easy. So this isn't too bad once we get down this far. And then an MFE, which again, we just discussed that. That's the same sort of stuff as this, but it requires a lot of these. So this one's pretty resource intensive to make. Kind of a giant pain in the butt, but well worth having made once we get there. All right, and I have the whole array made. The irony is it wasn't anything in the replicator chain that actually took me the longest. The longest piece was actually for this step right here, the MFSU, which isn't required to make the replicator, but is required to finish out the chain and do the glass fiber step. And this one's so bad because it requires 6 Labotron crystals, which you just saw requires a ton of materials. So this took a while, and these don't stack in the inventory, so this is 6 slots filled all by itself. The other thing before I continue is, like, just as a general reminder and a general tip, folks, anytime you're required to make anything, make like a full stack of it, or just toss a full stack of materials at it and make a ton of extra. Like, I just keep a ton of extra plates and gears here, and I still had to make a bunch when I came to do all of these machines. It just constantly keeps stock so you don't have to get them later. Same with my mechanism stuff over here. I keep a bunch over here. Anytime I make any or I run out, I immediately just toss another stack back into the metallurgic infuser and make some more. Or if I run out of fuel, I toss it into the enrichment chamber and make some more fuel. It comes in super handy. So, how to use the replicator? So the first step here is down with the scanner. This lets you scan in different items to basically be replicated. If you look at stuff in your inventory, you'll see this purple line at the bottom that says can be replicated with 8 MB of UU. Anything that has that can be replicated. And the list is actually pretty extensive in some really weird places you wouldn't think. But for right now, the biggest thing for me are the various machine cases all the way up the tech chain. This lets me just start skipping steps. So if we put this in here, you can see that it's scanning and it will slowly tick up over time. And we'll wait for this to finish. So apparently don't do what I did, which was use a time in the bottle on it. It just seems to just destroy the amount of power that it has on the box and just seems to kind of just choke and die. So I'm gonna start this over and we can just sit and wait patiently for this to finish. The other thing I want to show, in the time that it took me to make all of this, which was, I don't know, half hour to an hour, I lost track of time. we only gained about 27 millibuckets of UU matter, which isn't that much. Thankfully, if you look inside the scanner, things like the basic machine casing only take 8, but this is why we wanted to start stocking up on it early, was just so that we would have a fairly sizable supply just over time. Alright, so when it finishes, it just empties out, it says scan completed and result. With this, at that point you want to hit the save button. And what that does is it moves it up into the pattern storage, where if there were multiples, you would be able to click through these to show them. Once you have this, you can go up to the replicator, and you can go through your available patterns, in this case, the basic machine casing. So I'm at this point, I just need to start scanning all of the items I have that can be used in the scanner. Oh, I left off something important. If you just search for the word replicated, you can see the fullest of everything that can be replicated in here. And there's some important things. Things like dragon hearts, and litherite crystals, and chaos shards. So just maybe actually go look at the list before you forget something important. Or before you find something that's very hard to do that you can just very easily be copied. Oh, so there is one more thing I want to show you guys before we close this out. If you wire up your matter fabricator like this, and this applies to a lot of stuff in Industrial Craft 2, okay? Be very careful with the transformers. Because if you hook it up to power and it's the wrong transformer level, all you get is an explosion. And in the case of the matter fabricator, an extremely long one that might have crashed my game. Oh yeah, this is causing massive lag. I probably shouldn't have blown up my inventory, but you get an idea of the scope of the explosion here. So be careful with industrial craft machines, especially the matter fabricator. The matter fabricator blows up almost like it's a nuke. I have done this to a base before. Don't be me. In case that wasn't super obvious, I did that in creative on a copy. I didn't actually blow up my base. So now that we actually have the replicator done though, I actually feel a lot more confident in moving forward to things like thermal expansion and Ender IO now that I don't have to go make all of the cases for the machines by hand. So that's actually a good bit of progress, except the matter fabricator is moving pretty slow. And I think we still need to do the nuclear power step, but that's another episode. As always, I'm Ard. Thank you for watching, and have a nice day.